So let's talk about management, because I know that's what you're here to hear about, not just the history of my company. When I started Legion Logistics, the idea was, and the idea continues to be, how to make a company, like my introduction said, that people were excited to come work at every single day. I have worked those jobs where you sit in the parking lot before your shift starts, and you're just sort of nauseated, because you're thinking, oh, God, another day, another day. I'm just here for the paycheck. The minute I find something better, I'm out of here, right? I don't want my employees to feel that way. It's a horrible feeling. And Legion is not the place for everybody to work. I firmly believe that. We're a very specific kind of culture. We're a very specific type of sales job. So it's not correct for everyone to work at Legion. However, the people who do come to work there, I want them to be excited, and I want them to be engaged on a daily basis. Because if they aren't engaged and excited, they're not going to be motivated. They're not going to sell. I run a sales organization. We're not going to hit our revenue targets. And I am not going to pay my bills the way that I need to, because I don't make money unless the company makes money. So I try to apply those thoughts every day in the management decisions that I make, the leadership decisions that I make, and the company culture decisions that we make. For instance, things are a little slow right now because watermelon season isn't starting as quickly as we want it to. The harvest has been a little slow. And it's nothing we can control, it's Mother Nature. So the official start of watermelon season is coming up. So on Friday, we're going to have a watermelon chucking contest in the parking lot of our building. And we have sales teams, and then we have like our accounting team and our human resources team. They all get to put up a person to chuck the watermelon. And apparently, I just read an email, you're also allowed to make catapults to launch the watermelon. So I have no idea, just watch Facebook. I'll give you guys our links to see the carnage that's going to happen when and they're the personal size watermelons, not the big ones. So those, right? Well, I think it's because the one guy in HR has real spindly arms, and we didn't want him to like snap an arm off trying to chuck a full-size watermelon. So you got to watch out for your employees. But those are the types of things that we try to do on a regular basis, right? So that people are excited, they're motivated. Yes, we're waiting for watermelon season. Let's celebrate the fact that this is the time of year when we make our money. It's also the time of year when we work really, really hard. So let's try to do that. So we're going to talk about a couple of things today. Managing family versus outside people, because we started the business and I was just managing family members, which is almost as delightful as it sounds. Managing salespeople, who are the most difficult humans in the world to manage. Managing across generations. So I have people in my office who are grandparents, and I have people who just graduated from college. And motivation styles. So that's where that motivation piece comes in. And I will tell you that I don't typically differentiate between leadership and management. Management is about process in my mind, so that's about the paperwork side of it. And if you're a manager in my company, you also need to be a leader. So leadership is about motivating people. It's about leading, it's setting an example, all of that. So in my mind, the two things are kind of mixed. So when I'm saying management, you can also think leadership, because I'm not talking about paperwork today. Family versus others. So about 6 months ago, I had a giant screaming fight with my brother in the office. I would never have a giant screaming fight with any of my employees, ever. That's just totally unprofessional. But Levi and I are only 18 months apart in age, and he's older, and gets under my skin better than anybody else can. Who has siblings? Right? Do your siblings get you? So he did it. He disrespected me in front of some people, and instead of being mature and a proper leader, I lost my temper, and we started screaming at each other. So that sort of defines the difference between managing family members and managing other people. Because has anyone worked with family before in a business? I see you not like, oh, yeah. It's different. Everyone brings all this baggage to the table, right? In the 5th grade, he punched me in the arm. Or, he spilled my milk when we were in high school, and I never forgot the shame of it. So all of that comes to the forefront when you're having an argument about a math problem in basic training, which is exactly what our fight was about. So it's more difficult. It's also harder to fire family members. So I'm lucky, Levi's great. He's really, really great at what he does, and we would not be where we are today without him. But if he were terrible and I had to fire him, my mother would never forgive me. And that's baggage that you bring to the situation. If you're in a family business, it's really difficult. Like I said, Tony, my business partner, and I used to be married. We got divorced in 2012. So we had our biggest year ever in the company, and we got divorced at the same time. And that was incredibly difficult. And now we co-parent, because my daughter is also his daughter, and we live in the same neighborhood, and he manages half the business, and I manage half the business, and we get along great. But let me just tell you, that was a rocky road. People ask me if I would recommend going into business with people you're in relationships with, and the answer is no. No. It's tough. It's hard enough to have a personal relationship with somebody, whether it's a sibling or another family member or a significant other, to add an extra layer of stress of your income and having, especially if you have to supervise that other person, that's very complicated. So I always recommend keep the business and the personal separate. It's always a good idea. So that's managing family versus others. Then when we brought in other people into the business, so when we started hiring people outside of our family to come work in the business, they sometimes feel like they're part of your family too. So not only were they in my house, which was very personal, I'd be at the stove making spaghetti sauce, waving bye to everybody as they were leaving for the night, but they were also part of that family dynamic because there were only 2 or 3 of them, and then everybody else was family. And now that we've gotten much larger, the employees who are part of what we call the basement crew have a very different expectation of our relationship. So when I try to enforce timekeeping or vacation policies or anything like that with the people who were there in the very beginning, they take that very personally. Like, but remember when it was just us? Don't you remember that? And now it feels so formal because the more employees you get, the more formal you have to be with your policies and your procedures. And so that is something that I'm still trying to navigate every day with those folks, to say, yeah, I still love and care for you as a human being, but I need you to show up for work on time. And I need you to set an example and understand that there won't be exceptions just because you've been with the company 3.5 years. I value your service, but I have to apply the same rules to everyone. So it's very different. Salespeople. Are any of you in sales? Okay. Retail or? Okay. So salespeople are tough. I run a sales organization. The majority of my employees are salespeople. And if they aren't sales, they're sales support. And salespeople are difficult because they don't always like rules, right? They're very results, and I'm speaking in sweeping generalizations here, but you'll just have to go with me on this. They're results oriented. What I expect from them is to produce. I expect them to make sales. And there are times when I also expect them to behave a certain way, and that can be very difficult. Or I want them to also act as a leader in addition to just being a producing salesperson. So how do you figure that out? How do you figure out with salespeople how to draw those lines? I think one of the most important lessons to learn when dealing with a sales team is that not all of them are cut out to be managers. Some people are great salespeople, and that's all they want to be, and that's all that they should be. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. A mistake that gets made a lot, I think, in sales organizations is that salespeople get promoted out of that into a management or a leadership role when really what they want to do is make the sale. And then what happens is they can be very competitive with the people on their team, right? Well, when I was selling, this was my biggest rip, or I made these kinds of margins, or da-da-da-da-da. And in a leadership role, you're never in competition with your people, and it's never about you. So when you're leading a team of salespeople, it has to be 100% about them. So moving into a leadership position when you were a top salesperson and you got all the accolades and the bonuses and the applause and all that, that can be really difficult to take for your ego. Because, as you can see in point 2, as a salesperson, in general, they're egotistical, right? It's what allows them to bounce back from rejection. And that's a huge piece of sales, especially inside sales, which is what we do. We're on the phone all day long. It's really easy to say no to somebody on the phone, right? How many times have you hung up on a telemarketer? Would you slam the door in their face if they were standing on your porch? Maybe not. If you were in a store and somebody approached you, you wouldn't just be like, boo, no. You'd have a conversation. On the phone, you can hang up on somebody very easily. You have no idea who that person is. They don't matter to you. Just hang up. Having a strong ego allows you to bounce back from that and believe that the problem is with them, not with you. Right? So that's the attitude that you have to have as a salesperson. When you get promoted into that leadership position, you expect all of that spotlight to still be on you. And it's not. You have to shine that spotlight on your folks in order to motivate them, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And that's a difficult transition to make. You also, as a manager or a leader of salespeople, need them to be self-motivated, right? You can't be standing behind their desk every day with your pom-poms cheerleading them, picking up the phone for them, dialing the numbers, making them make the calls. So when you're leading a group of salespeople, it's necessary to create an environment in which they are self-motivated. Otherwise, they won't be successful. And this is true for every team that you're ever going to lead or manage. If you are stuck in the mode of micromanaging everyone around you, you're going to be frustrated, they're going to be frustrated, and no one's going to accomplish as much as they can. And so you have to create that self-motivation. Managing across generations. You guys are millennials, right? I'm looking around the room. You're all fairly traditional students. A lot has been written about managing millennials, and I think to a certain extent it's unfair. Because the millennial generation, which I missed by a year but feels like about 1,000,000 years, is painted with a very broad brush, right? So you're entitled, you're lazy, you expect to be promoted very quickly, you don't want to work hard, right? You don't want to hear that stuff. But that's what's being fed to folks who are already out in the workforce. So if you read Inc. magazine, you read Forbes, you read Fortune, LinkedIn articles are always written about millennials, how to manage millennials, how to deal with their questions and their expectations. And some of it is partially true. When I interview millennials, I hear a lot more about what does your company do for the community? What does your company do to support work-life balance? That sort of thing. Those are not questions that I asked when I was interviewing, and they're not questions that I get from older folks who are interviewing with me, right? But I think that too much gets made sometimes of managing those differences. I think that we should manage people as individuals, not necessarily as wide swaths of humanity. Because the things that motivate some of my millennials are not the same things that motivate others. And the leadership that I provide to them, if I do the same things for one of my interns, like Maurizio, right? Maurizio has very different motivation than Lindsay Newton, who is my marketing intern. But they're the exact same age. So if I try to do the same things for both of them because they're millennials, then I'm going to be in trouble. But you have to think, too, about leadership for people at different life stages. So the perks that I provide for someone who's young and doesn't have children and isn't married are different than the perks that I provide for folks who have families. So that's all about creating a space where everyone can win and providing that motivation, that space where everybody can win. So now that's what we're going to talk about. Motivation styles. How many of you know what motivates you? Like at your core, what motivates you? Anybody? What?
Just having somebody recognize that you put work in and put hard work down and done a good job.
Recognition. What motivates you? That's fine. Don't say that, like people say that like they're ashamed sometimes. There is absolutely no shame in being money motivated, right? I drive a Lexus, right? I drive a Lexus because I am at least partially money motivated. I like to have nice things, and that's okay. Don't ever let anybody tell you it isn't. I also donate a lot to charity. I always feel like I have to throw that caveat in there. But that's okay. Money motivation is important, and it's a big piece of the organization that I run, for sure, because I work with salespeople. Who else knows what motivates them? Anyone motivated by respect? Yeah, right? Whenever you're leading a group of people, whether it's in a team here at school or a group of employees, or in my case, 55 people every day, understanding what motivates them and gets them to come to work every day and gets them juiced about what they're doing is hugely important. Because if they're floundering, or if you only provide one sort of reward for everybody, it's not going to work. Right? If I put a Rolex up as a sales prize, somebody who's money motivated or, sort of outward appearance motivated is going to go right for that. And that's great. They're going to be super motivated by that. Someone who wants recognition is going to be more motivated by the award ceremony that I hold to give them that Rolex than they are by the actual watch. They could care less, right? So creating that space where everyone can win is super important. So you have money, you have respect, you have recognition, job well done, send out an email to the entire company. We have staff meetings every Wednesday. So this morning I stood up and I had a line of things. We give recruiting bonuses and we have sales prizes and we give tumblers at 90 days and all this stuff. And sometimes I feel like Vanna White, right? Because I'm just giving stuff out and shaking hands and doing all this. But the entire company has to be there and everyone gives a round of applause and everyone feels great when they're done because they've all been recognized. We have a big bell on the sales floor that you ring when you've closed a new customer. And when someone rings that bell, the entire office, accounting, carrier service, everybody stands up and claps. It doesn't matter what we're doing. If we're in a meeting with somebody and we hear the bell ring, we open the door, we stand up and we clap. That's just, it's a huge part of who we are as a sales organization. And so we do have some people, though, who don't like to ring the bell because they don't want the attention. Like, that's uncomfortable for them to go up and do it. So we have proxies who do it for them. They're the ones who like the attention. It's okay. You gotta know what works for you. Fairness. Some people are really motivated by the idea of their leadership being fair. So I'm going to get treated the same way you are. It doesn't matter how long I've known the boss. That is really motivating for them. So you have to explain things to them very clearly about why you made certain decisions. The worst thing that you can do in leadership, I think, is because I said so, right? Why did you make that decision? Because I'm the boss. Because that feels really disrespectful, right? When you walk up to your boss and you have a question about why a decision was made or why a policy is the way it is, it should never just be because. Now, there are certain things that you cannot discuss. So you term an employee, you can't talk about why you did that. But you can just say, hey, there were reasons, you know. And if you have currency built up with your people, they'll accept that. So if you don't stonewall them every time they ask you a question, when you say, you know what, I really can't discuss it, they're going to respect that, and they're going to know that's serious. Making arbitrary decisions and then refusing to explain yourself makes you a tyrant, not a leader. And Tony, my business partner, and I have friction about this sometimes. He's not a tyrant, don't get that impression. He just doesn't believe in a free flow of information as much as I do. I'm a very open person, I'm very transparent. People know things, that's fine. He's a little bit more guarded and closed. And so we have a regular debate about how much I feel like the employees need to know versus how much he wants to hold back because it's not their concern. And it may not be. You have to be careful when you're telling people why you make decisions to make sure that they understand it's not open for debate. Because sometimes when you have these conversations, people feel like, oh, okay, this is my point where I can chime in and change the decision. No, this is the way the decision's been made. But I want you to understand the reasoning behind it. We had to switch to a new time card system at work, and because of the Affordable Care Act, they require you to punch in and punch out if you're hourly, even though our folks have never had to do that. And if you're a salaried person, they require you to record your hours every day. Again, even though we've never had to do that, federal government regulations, right? So when you roll that sort of thing out to your employees, they immediately think you're trying to be Big Brother. Ugh, they just want to make sure I'm at my desk every hour of every day, and I don't even get to go to the bathroom, and God forbid I take a smoke break. So this morning in the staff meeting, I had to explain to them, no, Affordable Care Act makes us do this. Once you're over 50 employees, we don't have a choice. If we don't comply with these regulations, we get fined, and the fines go up and up and up. So I know it stinks. I understand that. I wouldn't want to do it if I were in your shoes either, but guess what? I can't change it. So just bear with me, do what we ask you to do, and in 2 years, Congress will change the law anyhow, and then we can all stop doing this, right? So it's those types of explanations. It doesn't allow them to say, but I'm not going to. Yes, this is the rule, and this is why. Freedom. Who likes to be able to flex their schedule, come into work when they want to, leave work when they want to? A lot of people are motivated by that. I have a marketing person whose daughter's 8 years old. No, she's 10 now, goodness. She started working for me 2 years ago. Her daughter will permanently be 8 in my mind. Her daughter's 10. Well, she's getting ready to end the school year, right? So Mary likes to spend the summer with her daughter. So I let her work from home, not work very much at all. She's hourly. During the school year, she only works until 2:30 in the afternoon. She's great. She does great work. She's the reason that I have all those awards on that slide, because she applies for every single one of those. I would not want to lose her. And she won't jump ship from my company because she's not going to find that kind of flexibility and freedom anywhere else. So for her, the motivation to come in every day and be excited is that she knows I care and that she gets to take that kind of time and have that kind of freedom. So that's a real motivating factor for her. And then development. We just started, I was telling Lou about this at the beginning of class, we just started a professional development program at Legion. So we finally have enough employees where people are being promoted into management. Before it would have just been us managing each other, which doesn't really work. But now we have a path. So new employees can move through a path to management if they want to. And there's training, there's education. My managers are right now taking a management development course through the chamber. So providing development and training is sometimes what motivates people. So the ability to grow yourself further and move into a new position, or even take those skills and leave and go somewhere else, is really what will motivate some folks to come into work every day, because they know, hey, I'm going to take this course. I'm not always going to be, just on the phone, brokering, doing all this sort of thing. I'm really going to be moving on in my life, and that's great, because it's not just for today, it's for the future. Don't assume that you know what motivates someone, right? I can assume that all my salespeople are money motivated, and they're not. A lot of salespeople are money motivated, but several people that I have on my staff are motivated by achievement, or they're motivated by development. They've stayed with me as long as they have because they want to retire from Legion Logistics, which I think is pretty cool. I appreciate that loyalty. And so that's what keeps them there. Once they reach a certain dollar amount, they did a study recently, and you guys have probably seen this about the company. I think it was out west that raised minimum wage at their company to 70 grand, right? Yeah, that was a result of a study that's been released that shows that happiness in general plateaus at about $75,000 a year when you earn that, in a job. And so that's sort of the tipping point. If you can reach 75 grand, then you're in good shape, which is true for some people. So this company raised minimum wage to $70,000 a year. Now, if you read the reviews of that company on Glassdoor or anywhere else, I think they needed to do something to keep their people. So Legion won't be raising our minimum wage to 70 grand anytime soon. But there always is a plateau. So even if you're money motivated, unless you're like, I want a private jet money motivated, you're going to reach a plateau in your earning where you're going to say, you know what, my bills are paid, I'm comfortable, my kids' school is paid for, everyone's got shoes and clothes and get their hair done and all that kind of stuff. Now what? So if you just keep throwing money at that person, it's not really going to work. They've reached that point where they're like, okay, I'm good. Now if you take that money away, that might do something. But you reach that tipping point in your own life and in your career. And just looking at a person doesn't mean that you can assume you know what motivates them. So ask. Ask your people. At the beginning of the year, I always ask my folks a question. I do it over email because some people are embarrassed by this because it's personal. But I always ask them, set one big, hairy, audacious goal for yourself for the year. For some people, it's buying a house, buying a car, quitting smoking. Losing weight is a huge one. And I ask them about that, and then I say, okay, so what's your plan? And what can I do here inside Legion with the prizes that we offer or the experiences that we have in order to help you accomplish that goal? And that tells me a lot about their motivation. The person who wants to buy a car for their son, that's not a money motivation. That's not them being motivated by the money it takes to buy the car for their son. That's giving their son something really big that their parents didn't give them, for instance, right? So I know that motivates her to do that. So I am working with her to structure a bonus system so that she can have the money to make that happen. But that tells you a lot about what motivates people. Sometimes people aren't always honest. You sort of just have to let it roll and then just watch what they do and watch the times that they seem really happy or the times that they seem really inspired to finish a project or work on something for you, right? It's a big deal. What questions do you have about this? I feel like I've been talking at you and I hate that. Do you have questions about how to motivate or lead? I was really good, wasn't I? Because I told you everything you needed to know. All right, well, if anything comes to you, just raise your hand. Everybody sells. I'm selling to you right now.